Welcome everyone. We're at the Sustainable Aviation Futures in Amsterdam. I'm Johann Wiebe from the Hydrogen Standard. With me here today is Paul Bloom from Gevo, Chief Innovation and Carbon Strategy Officer. Did I said that correct?
You got it close.
It's close enough. Good, great. Thank you to be here, Paul. It's great to have you. First of all, we would like to thank you for being a platinum sponsor. Very much appreciated.
Absolutely. It's great to be here. It's been an awesome conference so far. We've had, yesterday was great and today was even better. Really energizing panels, a lot of great topics, a lot of great information. We learned stuff. So that's what we always want.
Fantastic. Sounds great. For maybe a good introduction, tell us a little bit, what is Gevo all about?
Sure. Gevo is basically a net zero renewable fuels company producing hydrocarbons or energy dense liquids from renewables. And so we think about how do we connect the entire business system so we can produce sustainable aviation fuel, but not just sustainable aviation fuel, but nutritional products as well, and even things in the future like net negative chemicals.
So you have quite a wide remit then, a sort of a wide business case that you focus on, and sort of the aviation industry is just part of the business, or?
Yeah, the aviation fuel is our main focus today on what we're doing. So we're actually commercializing technology in the United States. So we're building a plant in South Dakota, a little town called Lake Preston. So it's going to be the biggest project in South Dakota history, so from a capital standpoint. But the sustainable aviation fuel plant there will be about 218,000 metric tons of sustainable aviation fuel or hydrocarbons that come out of the plant, and also about 250,000 tons of protein-based materials that will go into the nutritional markets.
Okay, so that's very interesting sort of developments in terms of the products that are going to be produced there, a massive facility. What about some of the feedstock? Could you talk us a little bit about that?
Sure. So we have a great network of agricultural producers that we work with today. So we start with carbohydrates. So we take the carbohydrates and first we always recover protein from the feedstocks that we use. And then we take residual carbohydrates that are left over after removing that protein, and that becomes our feedstock for sustainable aviation fuel. So as we produce that, we're using a lot of what are called climate smart agricultural practices that basically are used to make not only sustainable aviation fuel, but it makes the soil healthier that our farmers that we partner with are basically cultivating. And so year on year, we store actually more soil in the more carbon in the soil as we're going forward, in addition to basically producing a net zero fuel is what we're really after and want to accomplish.
Talking about sort of a net zero fuel, in terms of the sustainable aviation fuels, what are you most excited about? What do you think about the prospects of the fuel and the industry?
Yeah, well, one, I mean, it's a huge opportunity to make a big difference in a hard to decarbonize sector, as we all know. The other thing that we're really passionate about is around carbon tracking, right? Because it's not just good enough to say it's sustainable, you actually have to prove it. So we're very interested. We've created a system called Verity Tracking. It's basically a blockchain-enabled or distributed ledger technology where we can track all the way from the feedstock all the way to the end product and how it's actually used. So we can track the scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions through that value chain and really help our customers monetize that appropriately, retire that appropriately, and think about carbon holistically. And what we're really trying to do is make sure that, when customers are buying our sustainable aviation fuel, they know how it was produced, all the way from basically a field level, all the way through the value chain to get to that final, if you want, the seat on the aircraft.
So it sounds like a very sort of transparent value chain that is being organized?
Absolutely. So that's what we're all about transparency. We're all about how can you audit quickly, and then how can you make sure that you're having fewer mistakes. So that's why we've gone to a distributed ledger technology solution that all works by smart contracts, and then we can couple that together through the value chain and make sure that we're very accurate, but also have that transparency so auditors can come in and make sure that they understand and see that, and we can ensure that carbon value is real and that we can prove it all the way through the value chain, and then really reward the participants in our value chain, because we're not doing it all ourselves, right? We have a lot of partners, whether it's the farmers or the providers of the renewable electricity that we may be using. So think about that as we need to make sure that those who are providing benefits to carbon intensity are actually getting rewarded for it. And that's what the Gevo model is all about.
What is sort of your take on the general prospect of sort of decarbonizing the aviation industry? Maybe also a little bit beyond SAF. What sort of role can it play? Maybe short, medium to long term, and what sort of alternative solutions would be implemented or could be implemented in the aviation industry to decarbonize?
Yep. So we use a process that's traditionally referred to as alcohol to jet, right? So ethanol to jet. But on the way to doing that, right, we have to basically start to produce renewable electricity, for example. Think of about a plant that's basically off the grid. So we talked about feedstocks before. Now we're really thinking about how do you take that plant and basically take it off the grid, power it with things like renewable natural gas, use technology like carbon capture and sequestration where we can capture biogenic CO2 and store it in basically, deep geological sequestrations, in addition to all that sequestration that we talked about at the field level or in the soil. So all of these things together, it's not just about building a plant that's producing sustainable aviation fuel. It's about making food more sustainable. At the same time, it's about repowering rural communities in which we operate. And then, there's a bigger piece here because the same basic chemistry that we use can be used to make materials. So not only are we designing a system that can be used today for sustainable aviation fuel, but in the future, we'll be able to make net negative carbon materials that are the durable goods that we use every day in our lives.
I'm going to hook into that then. Tell us a little about the feedstocks you use and sort of the products that you produce from that.
Sure. So feedstocks that we use would be basically residual carbohydrates that come from agricultural processing. And then those get converted through alcohol to jet technology. So we actually today have the exclusive license of Axon's technology in North America. We also have our own technology that we're developing, but it's not ready for prime time yet. That technology, we basically, our new technology, we make renewable olefins, which are the same feedstock that we basically use as an intermediate to produce SAF, but instead we can make things like renewable propylene. And propylene is a raw material that's used to make a lot of the durable goods that we touch every day. So think about this as we're making a fuel that could be net zero or net negative, right? We're going to ultimately burn that fuel, and that carbon is released back. So we need to make sure that we can do that in basically a net zero way. But when we make a durable good, that durable good is basically going to have that carbon content, and that's going to be a form of sequestration, right? So we could make very net negative materials. So think about the dashboard in your car. Think about the materials used to make the aircraft. Those also can be not just net zero, but net negative. That's really where we're going.
That sounds very exciting. Talking about excitement, what else are you excited about, Paul?
So we're excited about getting our first plant off the ground, so to speak, right? So and getting that done. And then really, what's the second plant? What's the third plant? How do we keep that going? And again, we're really excited. We've opened up a business called Verity Carbon Solutions, right? This goes back to that tracking point that I was making. And so we figured out that the solution that we needed and that we developed for sustainable aviation fuel and the tracking and transparency that we talked about is the same solution that everybody needs throughout the industry, not just in SAF, but at large in carbon tracking. So we've opened that up, and we're starting to get clients in the biofuel space. We're looking to develop that as a bigger business for us, and very excited to partner on that with a number of hopefully many of the people here.
Fascinating stuff. Thank you very much, Paul Bloom from Gevo.